Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks, Public Safety, and Public Works Committee meeting for February 12, 2019. The purpose of the committee meetings are for the city departments to pass along information to the City Council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the City Council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as the chair of the committee meetings. By ordinance, the committee makes no formal decision on committee matters. Rather, items are voted to move to a mayor and council meeting for consideration and vote, or staff receives guidance from the committee regarding a matter. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee for January 15, 2019. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Grower.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Or raise your hands. Any opposed?
No, I was thinking.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, under Public Safety Fire, consideration to donate surplus turnout gear to Dawson County Fire Department. Chief Burnett.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Yeah, this is, a couple of months ago we donated to Gilmore County. They didn't take all of the gear because there was honestly quite a bit. So what I'm asking today is for Mayor and Council to consider to donate surplus gear to Dawson County Fire Department. We have approximately 29 coats and 44 pants. This gear was purchased in 2005 through a FEMA grant and 2008 by taxpayer dollars. The gear needs to be liquidated because it doesn't meet the NFPA 1971 standard, the 2018 edition. Therefore, it's past its useful life. The gear is to be used only for non-structural firefighting operations, and you have a letter that's attached to your document from Dawson County releasing liability for the city of Roswell, and that has been approved by legal. So staff's asking for this to be moved forward to the next mayor and council meeting for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Floor is open.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Wilsey. Was that Councilmember Palermo seconding?
Yes.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor, raise your hands. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Moving on to Public Works, item number 3, consideration of a building renovation project at the Solid Waste Division facility located at 1810 Hembry Road. Mr. Skulski.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this project is to complete some long-needed renovations for the 1810 Hembry facility on the sanitation side of the building. There haven't been any improvements made since it was constructed approximately 20-some years ago. The estimate that we have was put together with building ops cooperation using multiple standby contractors and vendors that the city's procured. And the main point I'd like to make about this is that we're only asking for a budget adjustment to transfer the monies from operating funds, which exist in the budget today, to a capital project fund, which is necessary to spend this on a capital project. The money is extra money that was left over from the cart purchase program, which came in significantly below budget. So I'll answer any questions you have. Nick Pizzello couldn't be here today. He's out sick. Otherwise, he would answer all the difficult questions. But fire away. There's estimates behind the item, and any questions, I'd be happy to try to address them.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy, second by Councilmember Grower. Any other further questions or comments? All in favor, raise your hands. Thank you. Motion passed unanimously. Item number 4, consideration of approval for the City of Roswell Stormwater Utility Master Plan.
Okay, I'm going to introduce a number of folks who are involved in putting this together. But once a year or so, we try to do a briefing on each of our funds, and this is going to provide that for our stormwater utility. We have a new stormwater utility manager. Adam Lyon, would you stand up for a second so everybody can see you? Adam began a couple of months ago in that role after Nick moved over from stormwater to our solid waste division. Also with me today is, it's down in the bottom. Dave Morgan is our Support Services Division Manager, and our Support Services Division prepared all of the documentation that you're going to see today and what's in your package. And it's an update of our original stormwater planning documents that were conducted back in the early 2000s to prepare for the stormwater utility. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave, who's going to run through what we've done, what we're doing, and a lot of the recommendations that you will see are things that we're already in process or in progress with that don't involve money. And of course, if they do involve money, we will have to come back to you through the budget process or individual projects. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Dave and let him run through it.
All right, good evening. Thank you. So our stormwater master plan update, or our stormwater master plan that we're presenting to you tonight, starts with the history. So the utility was formed in 2011. I recall at that time the fee was established by an offset in the reduction, or a reduction in our sanitation fee. So basically at the time it resulted in a no net increase for most of our residential customers. Since the utility was adopted, there's been several achievements. We've completed thousands of operations and maintenance work orders. We've installed several capital improvement projects, and of course we've installed several green infrastructure projects around the city. This is just a list of some of the objectives of the utility. Of course, the most important objective is protecting public safety. In the city, we have lots of stormwater infrastructure. We have to inspect and maintain, repair, replace that infrastructure. So maybe this kind of shows the numbers of what we do maintain. We have about 11 full-time employees, and we have about 14 and a half what we call full-time equivalent staff. Some of those folks are part-time employees. It looks like some of the graphics didn't come up on there, but some of us are part-time support roles, such as myself, providing. That's where you get the half. Some of my time is allocated to stormwater. Up here on the right, we like to brag about our GIS-based asset management system that we have in place. It's app-based, and you access it through the phone. These are actual screenshots from my phone of City Hall. When I was sitting in City Hall, this is stormwater infrastructure around City Hall. At the click of a finger, you can pull up information on a pipe system or a structure system. And having this database just allows us to be more efficient, quicker access to the data, and allows us to be more efficient at our permit compliance. So this is a list of things that our operations, our folks do on a daily basis in our O&M. This is just a listing of the work orders that we've completed each year, and then a picture of our vac truck that was purchased in 2017. The vac truck, you guys have probably seen a demonstration. It definitely has made cleaning out our storm drains and getting the debris out of them much more efficient and safer compared to sending men down into the structures to do that. So we have a lot of important missions, but I think one of our most important mission is our protecting our environment. And of course we do a lot of that through green infrastructure practices. We have several green infrastructure and other programs listed here that we do to accomplish that. Regulatory compliance is a significant portion of takes a significant portion of our resources. These are a list of the agencies that we report to. It's quite a few, and Roswell is a phase 1 municipality. We are regulated under what's the MS4 permit. I think most people are familiar with that, but the Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewer System permit under the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. Compliance with that permit is an arduous task. There's a lot that goes into it. There's the annual reporting that gets put together is a very significant amount of information that we're constantly collecting on a daily basis. And of course, some of us remember from 2016, the EPA conducted an audit, and that just kind of emphasizes the importance of us having to maintain and be steadfast in our commitment to compliance. I guess the one thing Roswell is exceptional at is our public education and our involvement. This is just some of the programs that we do that our stormwater utility supports. So our capital improvement program, consists of larger projects within our storm system, address public safety and protect our streams and our water quality. This is a picture of a project that was done. This is Worthington Hills culvert replacement project, and this consisted of a project that had corrugated metal pipe infrastructure that was aging and it was failing, and we'll get into a little bit more of that, but we replaced it with a much more durable reinforced concrete system. So our capital improvement program, we have a ranking system on how these projects get organized in our system. We have a criteria with health and safety, risk being the top, most heavily weighted criteria. This listing here is from the list that was published here on February 1st, 2019. I think it's important to note that this list does change as we gain new information, new knowledge based on inspections and other data that comes in. This list does get shuffled around. So this is accurate as of February 1st, but it changes. Currently, though, we have 145 total projects identified. This is just the top 12. But there are 145. The backlog is approximately $16 million. And to put that in perspective, since the utility was adopted in 2011, we've spent $6.2 million on capital improvement projects. So when we did this master plan, we looked at financial analysis or financials from 2012 through 2018 or through current. First of all, looking at the rates, the rate here shown is $3.85 per 4,000 square feet of impervious. That's just a way to get comparison rates for different communities. Roswell, of course, is down at the bottom quartile. This is the revenue versus expenses since 2012 and 18, or 2012 to 18. You can see the revenues remain fairly constant, and expenses are mainly increasing and can be somewhat variable. So we spent a lot of time in this master planning process looking at our risks and our challenges, not only today, but projecting them moving forward. Our largest risk is our aging infrastructure. These are statistics you guys know, but a majority of our homes were built before 1990. A lot of our infrastructure was built in the 70s and the 80s. And at that time, corrugated metal pipe was a common installation practice. And unfortunately, corrugated metal pipe has a lifespan of about 25 to 30 years. So we're at the end of a lot of our infrastructure's lifespan in our storm system. Another one of our challenges is additional regulations. The MS4 permit is always changing, and regulations, as we know, always become more stringent. The permits get renewed every 5 years. We're coming up on a renewal, and we know there's already some changes that we're anticipating in that permit. And then new infrastructure, as programs like T-Splost or new development comes in, that just increases the amount of infrastructure that our utility has to maintain. And then inflation speaks for itself. Rising costs are always something we have to take into consideration. So as part of the master plan, we developed many, many recommendations. We've got about 25 recommendations that we came up with. And we really wanted to try to make them, we wanted to align them with the city's strategic objectives from the previous budget. So So we started looking at it from the safety, so a safe and secure environment. The first one we were mentioning here is the evaluating all the cross drains within the right-of-way. Because a lot of that infrastructure is corrugated metal pipe, pipes crossing under the road have a propensity to create more hazard for obvious reasons. So we want to make sure that we have a good assessment of the condition of those pipes so we can better update or have a better listing of our capital improvement projects and factor that in. The other thing we want to do is to maintain $500,000 in our fund balance for emergencies. Just for that reason, knowing that our infrastructure is at the condition it's in, having this will allow us to quickly and easily finance those emergencies. So sustainable infrastructure, community resources, a couple of the ones we want to highlight. There's several here, but I'm going to highlight a couple. We want to expand our ability to install RCP pipe. That's what we're proposing. Right now, our equipment is not suitable for installing larger concrete pipe. We have to outsource that to contractors, and we would like to be able to do that ourselves. It'll save some time, cost to be able to do that. We're also recommending to expand the ability to manage more CIP projects so that we can reduce that backlog. On this slide, as I mentioned, in our environmental protection, green infrastructure is a big component, and it's an important component in our stormwater utility and to the city. And we've got several recommendations that are considered green infrastructure, and a few of the ones I've highlighted here are we have our green infrastructure team that we provide leadership for, evaluating projects and for all our city projects, and then educating our development community with some outreach programs to expand upon those. Good governance, again, we've got several recommendations, so I'm just going to highlight a few. So the first one I want to highlight, coordinating CIP projects with other activities in the city. For example, our RDOT paving program, we want to make sure that our projects, if we can align them with their paving program, we want to do that. So hopefully we can save some cost and save some disruption to the community. Also, we want to restore our CIP budget. We're recommending restoring it to $1.1 million. Current projections are showing that to be $750,000, and based on our backlog of $16 million, we just don't feel that $750,000 is going to really reduce that backlog. So we're recommending increasing that. And the other one I've highlighted is adopting an inflation-based rate increase in our stormwater fee, which takes us to the slide here. And I think everybody's seen this slide it's been presented by finance, but this is just a pro forma projection that shows a 2.5% rate increase that accomplishes our objective of restoring the budget to $1.1 million, our CIP budget, and maintaining a minimum reserve of $500,000. And just for how this affects the current rate structure, this is the rate structure, but we put an example down here. A tier 2 person, for example, currently pays $3.95 per month. In 5 years, that would go to $4.47 per month, basically a 52 cents per month increase. $6 what that would come out to in 5 years. So we put together the plan, and so the next step really is just the implementation. So next step would be putting together, taking those recommendations, assuming approval, and then we'll develop an implementation plan.
So I'd just like to make a couple comments and entertain any questions that y'all have. If you can move to the Q&A slide. But a couple things. One, we appreciate finance's help in putting the pro forma together. They helped us a lot, and all of those recommendations would be incorporated into the budget going forward if you all approve that. Those items are currently in there, and that's what our REIT has shown in prior forecasts as far as our plan. We got that far along in time to include it in the budget. And The only other thing I will put in is just a plug, since before I came to the city, I was advocating for inflation-based fees, and this is the first time I've had a chance to bring one forward that was a modest one of something close to the inflation rate. So with that, I'll entertain any questions and try to respond.
What we talked about in our mayor's meeting yesterday, I think it's important to know why you want the $500,000 cushion. And something you said yesterday was often emergency repairs go between $50,000 and $250,000. Rarely do they reach the Pine Grove of $800,000. So that for most of the emergencies we have in the city, that would cover us and make sure we have enough to respond because of the aging infrastructure. And I think that kind of helped me understand why we want $500,000 in the bank.
Yeah, our basis for that was 2 bad ones in a fiscal year was kind of how we came up with that. That should cover us for most situations.
Thank you.
I have a very, very minor question, and you didn't highlight it, but what does create a pet waste program look like?
My 6-month-old dog.
I'll take a stab at this. So one of the main, each of our streams in the city is evaluated based on water quality. The number one concern that puts all of our streams on the meeting their weighting or water quality standards for recreation is fecal coliform bacteria. The number one source of that fecal coliform bacteria in Roswell is not horses, it's not us, it's actually pets. And pets and humans are actually pretty close, but we've done a number of studies on this over the years, and that is not unique to Roswell. It's very common in every suburban and urban area across the country. And EPA actually is putting a lot of emphasis on pet waste education. That program is to be developed, and it would be largely outreach and education for pet owners. We haven't figured out exactly how, but posting, the signs in recreation areas and having dog parks with, pick up after your pet and all that kind of campaign and bags available. That's part of it, but we really need to amp that up as a community, and especially when we see situations where, we've got a dog park next to a stream, for example, or those types of things, or customers have areas where they've just let their dogs run free, which doesn't happen legally in the city, but the point is we can do a better job of educating people about how important this is to water quality, and that's what the program can try to do.
Well, just one other question about that. Can you tell the difference, for example, like raccoons and deer, you can tell that difference with dogs and cats?
Between dogs and cats, I'm not sure, but you can DNA type the bacteria, and that's what we've been doing over the last several years, and it's a technology that didn't exist 10 years ago, but it exists now, and we've been doing it in most of our watersheds in conjunction with our water quality monitoring, so we actually can tell the source.
Has your liaison been helping you test it?
And is best practice to dispose of it with other solid waste, with
Yes,
household garbage?
that is
Yes, that's the best practice.
Well, I was going to say, in my neck of the woods, my neighbors are just brutal. They'll come out of their house screaming if you don't immediately pick up after your dog. So I just thought people were getting so much better about it. I had no idea that people were still letting their pets roam free. Wow, interesting.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Comments?
I have a question about the capital improvement program. You can go to the slide, please, 1 second. Yes, this one, perfect. So I see, maybe quick and dirty, those 12 projects are around 13 million, somewhere there.
1.3. sorry.
Yeah.
But
So,
your point is?
so okay, so the 16 millions is on top of these 12 projects, right?
It would
Yeah, approximately-
It would include those 12.
Okay.
The entire backlog is 16 million,
Including
this
the
is
top
top
12.
of the list.
Okay, perfect. And then in terms of timeline, what do you recommend to tackle 12 or any other, you know?
As fast as we can, and maybe one of the other points that we didn't mention as we were going through our recommendations, but it is on one of the slides, and that is this proposed plan is consistent with our current extent and level of service. So this is what we could afford, not what we could afford. 1.1 million is a good, consistent capital budget that we will chip away at this backlog at the pace that we can afford to do. There's a lot of compliance work that just has to happen, but we've made it consistent with this funding plan of 2.5% inflation-based increase, if that makes sense. So we're not recommending how fast the backlog could be reduced, because we actually add to the backlog when we find new problem areas through our inspection programs, and it rains hard, or we have a sinkhole, or we have a water line that erodes under a road. So there are a lot of things that are adding to our backlog as we're subtracting, if that makes sense. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. So, the question is, time for execute. Yeah, right.
I think our hope is to go as quickly as we can and to reduce that backlog, but more importantly, having a $500,000 reserve fund will allow us to be able to respond quickly in the event of emergency. And that's what we want to avoid, the emergencies, if at all possible.
Similar scenarios to the water line. Okay.
Do we have any major culvert projects? I know we have Norcross, right, coming up or underway, right?
Yes.
Are there any others that are a major concern to you at this time? I'm just trying to think about this. You mentioned working with transportation at the same time and sidewalks and all that, but I'm just curious if we have any major.
I'm going to defer to Adam. Are there any other major culvert issues that you are aware of at this point in time? And the reason I'm going to hedge a little bit on that is, not hedge, but one of the things we did here was update our criteria for evaluating and ranking all of these. And one of the other things that we are in process of doing, these higher priority known issues have been kind of reassessed in terms of their potential cost. But when you say major projects, there's a lot of the middle to lower part of the capital list where I'm not sure how big those projects are, and we don't really know exactly how expensive they'll be to repair. But Adam, are there any other ones that are close that you're concerned about?
Well, the Azalea Drive one was going to be a major culvert system that we need to address. All those that say pipe system lining on the list there are culverts, and the third-party engineer that we had do the evaluations recommended lining because of cost and time savings and being able to move quickly. But the most major one that we have on the horizon is Azalea Drive, and but we are doing our we intend to do evaluation of all the cross drains, and the potential exists for us to find something that's going to move straight to the top of the list.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, I have a couple questions about the master plan. Is this tied to our permit?
We're not required to do a master plan, but our permit does require us to do a stormwater watershed management plan.
Which responds to the permit.
And that has been done. It actually is a separate document, and I believe we included it as an appendix to our master plan. So the master plan that you have in your package does not include all of the appendices printed out if you printed it, but that's another binder that's about an inch thick with a lot of history and a copy of our current, what we call the swamp. And that is a permit required document, but it's not physically part of the permit.
Okay. Are you asking the council to approve the plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy,
Second.
second by Councilmember Grower. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thanks, gents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Time? Somebody to go and tell some jokes. Just need to play this little Jeopardy thing. But then we'd have to pay royalties. And then we'd have to pay whatever. Okay, we're going to move on to the next agenda for Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks. First item on the agenda, approval of the minutes of the Administration, Finance, and Recreation, and Parks Committee meeting for January 15th, 2019. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy,
Second.
second by Councilmember Grower. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Item number 2 under administration, we are going to defer this one to a future meeting. We're not ready to have that discussion yet. So we're going to move on to item number 3, discussion regarding the fiscal year 2019 budget item, $50,000 for an economic development review. This came up during my discussions with the Community Development Department and Finance when Finance has a new system that we're doing where I can't remember what we call it, Ryan, where we report back to the council on the projects we're working on. Is there budget initiative report? So we review all the projects. This came up and it seemed more appropriate for this to be under administration, economic development. So I had that transferred over into my office. And in kind of looking at, and talking to Alice, we weren't really sure what the scope would be on this. So I'm back and watched the video from the budget meeting that we had last year. And we actually had a pretty healthy discussion on it. So I've got the scope of work, I think, pulled from that meeting. I want to run it by everyone here, make sure that scope of work is correct before I proceed with this. And I just want to have that discussion. So in looking at the meeting from May 14th, it looks like what came out of that for a scope of work would be to work with the mayor and city council to come up, this would be the firm that we hire, work with the mayor and city council to come up with a clear vision of what economic development means for Roswell. And number 2, evaluate the organizational structure of economic development in Roswell. And those are the 2 things that I have right now for the scope of work, and also that it should be with a top national institute. And if that sounds correct, I'll roll with it, or if there's anything else that needs to be added with that, I'd like to have that discussion. Floor's open.
Is this the right time to do this with us doing our strategic plan?
I thought about that. I don't think it would pull anything from the plan. The only worry I would have is it's a lot. It's a lot of staff time. It's a lot of work for me. I don't know what this process looks like, so compounding that with all the other initiatives we have going on, it may be a little burdensome, but I just don't know yet.
I guess my question is, won't the strategic plan tell us similar things?
Possibly. It depends on how that goes. I mean, if the community comes back and says we need to do A, B, and C for economic development, and the city council decides to make that a priority, then we would, as a staff, need to come up with objectives to meet that goal. And if one of the objectives is this, then it could be born out of that, but it's too early to tell how that's going to go.
I'm not against this. I I don't want to go do a plan on top of a plan that gives us another plan. You know, I mean, if we're paying $50,000 for this plan and we're doing a strategic plan, and it's going to be saying, well, you know, here's your structure. You need an economic director internally. You need, you know, Roswell Inc. Roswell Inc.'s working fine. Roswell Inc.'s not. You know, whatever it says. I think the strategic plan says this, and then on top of that, you've got. I mean, if we have to do this afterward, then we have to do it after. I just don't know if it's worth spending the $50,000 if we're doing another plan right away as well. And it's, again, the time commitment as well. So I'm kind of ambivalent to this if anybody's got strong feelings.
And
Floor's open.
I guess I saw this as being, you know, an opportunity to look at the structure that we have and how that structure, where improvements can be made to the existing structure. Also, unique opportunities that the city has, and then how do we shore up the resources that we do have?
I don't think that would be this.
No.
I think from what I gathered from the discussion we had last year, it was just those two things, which is work with the council to come up with a clear vision of what economic development means, and then also evaluate economic development in Roswell to make recommendations on how maybe we should be set up. I'm assuming that's what that means.
Right, yeah. I mean, I could see some of that coming out of the strategic plan, but I definitely see it as needing to be a priority, so.
I don't think,
I think
for
there's
what you're
maybe
talking
some
about for
overlap.
$50,000, I don't
Yeah,
know if we
do
can
think
get that
there's
deep
some
into it.
overlap, Right.
So I share some of Councilmember Wilsey's thoughts as well as memory of the discussion. So I see the strategic plan as the big picture, high level of really all of Roswell. And this discussion dealt more specifically around economic development. And as Mr. Palmer mentioned, two aspects of it. One, this council needs to have an open, important discussion of really what is this mayor and council's vision of economic development. That is an important part of it. And then another important part of it is, I believe, a part of what Councilmember Wilsey just said on having really what is the best possible structure to support economic development. And a part of that being, is there more additional support that the city can be providing to Roswell Inc. or to the right structure. So I think this is absolutely critical, and the reason I think it's critical is because we're in budget season before you know it. There's going to be a very large check that this council is going to be asked to write. I'm sure it'll be a good one and well worth it, but I think we'll be better justified in that large check if we've gone through this process.
You know, I would also add just kind of the need to look at economic opportunities in the, the Holcomb Bridge corridor, particularly with the East Roswell focus that's going on and with the, 400 Holcomb Bridge area. So I don't know that we're ready to completely define where the money's spent, but I think there's a lot of need for it as a budget item.
Councilmember Palermo's point, timing of this and what it looks like. I mean, if we start pulling it together and we've got people like this and this and this with a strategic plan, and this gets, where does this fit? Is this before the strategic plan? Is it during the strategic plan? Is it in concert with strategic plan? Is it in concert with the East Economic or the East Roswell Economic, so they can go over and speak to them? I mean, I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered on this as well.
We've got a lot of balls in the air, and like it or not, we've got what? How do we assist Roswell Inc.? First, let me back up. I think, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I'd be willing to bet you all my paycheck, which isn't much, but I'd be willing to bet you that the number one priorities in this city with the strategic plan, it's going to come out that it's economic development. So how do we make Roswell Inc. a success? How do we make our DDA a success, because they're involved in economic development as well? And we've got the East Roswell Economic Action Committee that is working on things. So I'm really conflicted because we've got a lot going on, staff's got a lot going on, but at the same time I feel as though if we just keep holding off everything, until we do, like I said, I am predicting that economic development's #1 in that strategic plan. So I am comfortable with going ahead with it. I think that we need to know, and Councilmember Palermo mentioned it, when we're looking at the budget, you know, how do we deal with it? Do we put a position in place that assists the DDA, that is a point person for Roswell Inc.? Is it, you know, how do we pull all of this together? Because I think that we can start making some good decisions moving us down the road of economic development without waiting for the strategic plan. So I guess I'm coming down on the side of.
Is there an example deliverable of what this would look like? I mean, from any of the consulting firms?
I don't have anything as an example.
I'm just curious. I'd like to see that, just to see what it looks like next to a strategic plan, to see how much more detailed it is at the level that we're talking about spending.
For something like this, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be very detailed. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of on-the-ground analysis. I think a lot of it's going to be looking at our operations from wherever this firm or this institute resides, giving us a snapshot or an inventory of where we are now, and just kind of giving us the comps of what other cities are doing, what other best practices are, and maybe making some recommendations on some changes.
What about as a next step, having your office run down, just seeing really who are the top firms in the country that have a specialty? I know, Mr. Brummer, you and I had discussed, I was curious about the University of Kansas. Yeah. And when you looked into it, you found, although they're the best when it comes to city government stuff, you said not from an economic development. So what if we see what are the different firms, universities, et cetera, whatever it is nationwide that have these types of services, and maybe once you see, hey, here's the 3 best players that seem to be really big in this, then we can start to have a discussion and look at, you know, what are different opportunities and next steps.
You know, and to that point, I mean, I think it's important to remember, you know, economic development is not just business and bringing business. I mean, it's transportation, it's community development.
Touches everything.
It's infrastructure. It touches everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we will learn a lot about that from the strategic plan. So, yeah. We definitely have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, floor is open.
Thank you. So, yeah, I don't think the strategic plan will touch organizational structure to support economic development in a very competitive environment. So I don't know if we need a consultant firm exclusively to analyze the organizational structure to support economic development, which is not going to come from the strategic plan. The vision of economic development most probably will, or part of this will come, but the organizational structure is what is not going to come from any of the plans. And this is what I would like to focus the consultant firm to make a recommendation. So that is what I think about this. I mean, if the original was different scope of work, I will say that I will support this for a scope of work of organizational structure.
There.
Do you have enough information, I'll tell you where I'm going with this. Do you have enough information from us that you could pull together an RFP and put it out there?
I have enough
and
info.
See what kind of scope of work comes back in those proposals.
I can
And
do that.
that might give us all a better idea of what we're looking at here, what are the deliverables, and I don't think it would hurt, because it would help us define the discussion.
I can use what I have now and develop a scope and contact some of these firms or institutes that do this work and see what comes back.
That's good.
I can, after that, I can tell, you know, what kind of staff capacity we need to do this, and what kind of timing this firm will need, and answer some of those questions.
And they might tell us, you need your strategic plan first.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
But if everybody's good with these two elements, I'll roll with those and see what comes back.
Can you repeat the element, vision of economic development?
Work with the mayor and city council to come up with a clear vision of what economic development means for Roswell, and then evaluate the organizational structure of economic development in Roswell. That's exactly what was discussed at the budget meeting last year when we talked about this. So I don't need any action on that, just need some clarification. So I'm good to go if you are. And there are no action items for finance or recreation of parks, so we are adjourned. Thank you.